This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Victoria Scholz, and we're going to talk about the true cost of fashion. And yeah, it's always important to talk about like the true cost of anything in life. But before we get into your full story, I always ask any guest that's on the show a couple of questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Of course, let's get all into it. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Thank you so much for having me here today. Why do I do what I do? Because I'm a firm believer of what I do. I'm very value driven, and honestly, I'm literally just fighting for what is right for me and what I believe in. And I think there's nothing more motivating than fighting for what you truly believe in. So honestly, I'm just saying what it's just speaking my truth and just fighting for what I believe in.
That's awesome. You started really young, like a lot of creative people.
Yeah,
At 15 years old, you got into the world of fashion and you founded your own brand. You like to educate consumers about the realities of the fashion industry, about the sustainable and inclusive practices and diversity. And we live like, I'm in the US and we all know what happened here, where there's been a big backlash against like diversity. There's been a
mm-hmm.
big backlash against, just inclusion,
True.
neurodiversity, people just like poo pooing anything, all the
Mm.
fights that we had in the 60s and 70s and up till recently, everybody's like, oh well, we don't need any of that.
I hate
So
it.
now we're
I
living in
hate
a
it.
world, and being a creative person, it's very disheartening, but it's also like a reason to keep on saying things. And
True.
as a writer, like what we like to do is we like to say things and frame things, and maybe people don't know because we'll maybe like a poet, we'll layer it with language. So sometimes we're not as direct, but we're actually saying it.
Amen.
You know what I
Amen.
mean?
Absolutely true.
You try to like
Absolutely.
make a statement, Gene Roddenberry on Star Trek used to make statements about racism through science fiction, and
I
it
love
wasn't
that.
as direct, but people still like, oh, he's actually saying things about what's going on now, but he's acting like it's in some alien world. And I
Yeah.
think it's cool how you can, as an artist, you can still make your statement if you think it through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I honestly think that as an artist, it's always a matter of how to creatively say something, without like trying to be rude or anything, but really like finding creative ways on making a statement and saying something that's really important to you. So I feel like that's also like the power of art, to find creative ways to say what's truly meaningful to you.
At a young age, you had a permission structure where you felt at age 15 that you should be able to do, what you wanted in fashion. And I think that's really interesting because there's a lot of people, it takes them a lot of years to get to that point. A lot of people don't feel they have the permission because it's like, well, I'm not William Blake, I'm not Shakespeare, I can't be like Jimmy Page, so I can't, I don't have the right to be on stage. You know,
Hmm.
what made you
I
feel that you had that, that drive and you felt like you could do it?
Well, honestly, like I don't think if I like, deserve it, but I think I was just so grateful to my parents who allowed me to like follow my dream to work in fashion and allowed me to change high schools to do a fashion high school diploma. But it was really for me just like since I'm a little girl, I've been like sketching little dresses. I was having like this little top model blogs. I don't know if you know them, where you have
Wow.
like the little figures and you like just sketch your designs. And I've been literally doing that since I'm like a little kid. Like fashion was forever my biggest passion since I can think. So for me, it was just something like I love nothing more. I'm not like there's nothing that I'm more passionate and fascinated about, and nothing where I feel like where I belong more than in the fashion industry. So I want to try, and I want to follow that dream. So like to start with a fashion high school diploma and start to work with at a for a fashion designer was really just my way to figure out this is my true love and this is my passion, but can I really like fit in the industry. So it was really just about following what I love the most and finding out if there's something I can truly live my life with doing.
Well, that's awesome. 'Cause that's like that's when people have that kind of drive, and then they actualize, like you self actualize. It's always really cool to see people because, like in the arts, a lot of times I work with artists, and they're a lot. You'll see a lot of times they suffer from imposter syndrome, where
Mhm.
you'll go to like a painter's loft, and they've got like hundreds of paintings sitting in there. And say, well, these are awesome. Are they in the gallery? It's like, oh, they're not ready.
Mhm.
And then you're
I
like
do.
they're not willing to put it out in the world.
I
And
do feel
sometimes there's
that.
artists that put stuff in the world, and they might not be as technically as good as some of the artists that don't put their stuff out in the world, just because it's like a confidence issue.
That's absolutely true. And honestly, I struggle with that. Like for example, yesterday I was buying fabrics for my new collection, and I was literally having a moment where I'm like, who do I think I am? You know, to produce my own collection and to have like my own label. And I had those moments so many times where I'm like, literally, who do I think I am to be able to do that?
Mhm.
But at the same time, there's just nothing that I love more. And honestly, like since I've been fighting and since I've like been knowing about the problems where we get to later, but since I've been knowing about them, there's just no chance in hell that I will not talk about it and not try to, like educate consumers about it, because it's just something that I so firmly believe in. And there's just like, those are my values that are being compensated right now. And I just can't bear it. I can just like
Yeah,
physically cannot bear it, that the industry that I love so much and like the magic of fashion that I adore since I'm a little kid is harming so many people and the environment. I cannot bear it, you know?
yeah.
So
So
it's for me, it's literally just like, it would be like the most unnatural thing ever. And I would be so unhappy trying to do something else if I know that there is a fight that I need to fight, and it's out there, and it's kind of my purpose to fight this fight.
I think it's real important to kind of know your purpose,
Yeah.
and that passion and the purpose can kind of drive through. I think a lot of people have this. I've talked about it on the podcast a bunch of times. This need for safety. So
Mm-hmm.
in the world, like as human beings have always had this idea, like you stay inside the tribe or the clan or the group, right? Because there's a sense of safety. If you go out in the wilderness by yourself, the wolf's at the door. The modern
Mm-hmm.
world is like there's a kind of safety in numbers about having the same opinion, because then people don't attack you. You go on social
Mm-hmm.
media and you're on an outlier, and then everybody says, "Oh, I hate it. What are you talking about?" They just attack you. And as an artist, vulnerability is the main thing we have. Like our secret sauce is our ability to kind of pull that muse and then speak to people. Everything, a lot of people feel what we feel, but they don't know how to voice it. And we know how to voice it through, being a designer, being an artist, being an actor, being a painter. We know how to voice that. And then people see what that resonates, and they say, well, that's authentic. Well, to
That's
be
great.
that authentic, you have to take a risk. And there's a sense of safety where, like, every artist knows, is like, yeah, you take it personal if somebody says they hate it, but there's a world of law of attraction. You put it out there, there's a lot of people that love it. And so then you have to start, ignoring the people who just say they hate it with no constructive criticism. Just saying you hate it without telling me why doesn't really help me as an artist. But if you tell me like, oh, your compression on this track is bad, or you're changing keys and I don't get it, I don't understand what you're trying to do, then at least you give me some feedback. But if you don't give me any feedback, then it's like, what's the point?
That's so true. That's beautifully said. And honestly, I also think that like this drive for perfectionism, it what kills true art, in my opinion,
Yeah,
because like we're all human. Like if you start with something and you literally just started, doing music, doing art, doing fashion, you won't be perfect, or you won't be at the
you
same
make a
level
lot of
as someone
mistakes.
who
You
did
break
it like
things.
20 years, like in what world. But for me, it's just like if you don't ever start, you will never get there. So I feel that on so many levels. Like I actually put out like 8 music videos, like 8 songs, because I was having like this moment where I was doing so many videos talking about environment and like and people and like the injustice, that I was
Mhm.
like trying to force myself to find new creative ways to say my message
Boy,
without like having just like videos where I talk about it. So I was doing
yeah,
like
music.
I was trying to put it in music, and I knew it was bad. Like I knew it, you know what I mean?
You
like the
know,
quality was
when you
shit, my
tried it,
producer was
yeah,
bad, you know, I knew it, but I still loved it because the message, like the words that I've written and the lyrics of the songs were still like pouring from my heart and was really like so meaningful to me. So I was like, yeah, possibly shit, but the message
yeah.
is still good, you know?
Well, that's the
So I
whole
feel
thing.
like
It's like the idea of the
yeah,
punk aesthetic. You know, I'm a child of the
yeah,
'70s, and
yeah,
there was this whole thing in music where you had to be like Motown level singing, right? Or you know, just totally phenom level guitar playing like Hendrixian, Jimmy Page. You know, certain level. Like you can't even get into this industry unless you could be at this level. And
yeah,
the punk aesthetic, when you see the Ramones and the Clash and the Sex Pistols, they show up. Even the Talking Heads, they say, well, you can be different. You could have this punk aesthetic where Joe Strummer from the Clash, he's like very political, no, not perfect pitch, it's very punk aesthetic, and just saying and feeling passion about what you're doing. And that was okay. And it gave a permission structure for people to say, you don't have to be a perfect musician. And how idea like perfect, perfection is not always, the best friend of art. Because a lot of times,
yes,
I
mm,
love like Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground, and that created a whole genre of independent music up to this day. People listening to the Velvets and what Lou Reed did in '66, even to this day, inspires tons of musicians to say, I can be a poet. I don't have to have a perfect voice. I can say things that are not just about love songs. I can talk about other things. And I think
amen,
when you give people permission structures that, yeah, it's like, sometimes the happy accident is better than people being like, in their digital audio workstation trying to make things perfect on a grid where I like to just play. I have
yeah,
like just recorders, and I'll just go on my piano and go for an hour and just see what comes out of it. And then, sometimes
mm,
there's a song in there, and that's okay to kind of just kind of stream of consciousness, just ramble. I've talked to authors that do that too. It's like they just go on a kind of word vomit and just put things down. And like if an artist, when you give yourself the permission that it doesn't have to be some great, you know, really detailed, focused thing, that sometimes it can come from the heart, it can come from the soul, and then that actually sometimes resonates even better.
sure, beautifully said.
So when I know you have a mission that we're going to probably start talking about now, because it's like sustainability is maybe the first point we'll talk about, because a lot of times, corporations, they'll kind of say they're into it and they'll make a statement. All the big corporations say that they care about pollution, they care about
Mhm,
the environment, but when you really look at it, like if you're an
mhm,
activist and you go see
mhm.
what these big billion-dollar companies say, and then you look at what they do, it doesn't really align with what they said.
So true. I honestly feel like just the fact that we have the word greenwashing and that's it's like a full-on thing, and that
Yeah,
we have like a new legislation called the Green Claims Directive honestly says it all,
yeah.
because something that is, you know, like so common and like so often used and misused, that you have a new legislation fighting exactly against that, honestly,
Well, it's
you
like
know.
labeling. People saying like labeling something natural, and then natural doesn't really mean natural. But then people
It's
go to the store and
terrible.
they think that when it says natural, it's not the same as organic. So,
No, and
people
also
trick people,
yeah.
all the
Yeah,
time.
amen. You know, and it's just like because there's so much psychology behind it and so much science, you know, they think like if they just write like big sustainable all around their posters, and if they have like green tags, that just does it. But if you look at the tag and it's like 100% polyester, like who are you kidding? Who
Yeah.
are you kidding? You know?
It is,
But
yeah.
Yeah, but I really think like that's why like conversations like you and I having today is so important, and that's why I'm so internally grateful to be here today to talk about it, because I honestly think like the consumer needs to be educated in order to make responsible decisions, you know, because everybody's literally trying to play them, and that's so horrible. And I feel so bad because honestly I adore every single person in this world trying to buy greener and trying to make a good choice and trying to make a responsible choice and trying to purchase a sustainable product. I adore those people from the bottom of my heart. And that's why I feel so bad if like companies use that
Yeah,
goodness in
trigger, yeah,
people and try to trick them. Like,
yeah. But
ah.
it's kind of like the responsibility of every consumer today is you need to actually do a little research. And you need to have advocates like yourself to kind of point people in the right direction, but you can't just go, because the problem is a lot of people just go for the like easy common denominators. Like I'll go to a store and it says natural, has a green tag on it, don't do the work to check it out, and then they just do it. And you say, well, I'm trying to do the best, but like, did you really try? Because the thing is,
Mm,
like, you really have to take your brain and and use it. and my thing is like a lot of times it's like, what is about sustainability, right? If something's plant based, it's probably more sustainable, but there's even probably plants that could be invasive, whatever. So you could get into the details. But if it's
mm,
like petrochemical based versus plant based, but
yeah.
that there is that's a core thing right there. He's like, is this product being made with petrochemicals, you know, versus being grown sustainably? Or recycled material, or depends on what your approach is. How green are you? Because you could be very green, or like in the middle, or like so it depends on like there's so many different levels. But maybe you kind of talk to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And honestly, like I'm so happy to give them all the information that they need so they don't have to think, they don't have to do the research. Obviously, like do your research and read about it, you know, like everything you do in that direction is beneficial. But for me, it's like I would like to help the consumer so they feel a little bit more guided, so they have a little bit more of an idea. Because honestly, at the end of the day, it's as easy as just looking at the tag, just trying
Hmm.
to look at the tag, you know, because obviously like the more experience that you have, you feel it, you know. But the thing is that synthetic fibers became so good that even like in the big, you know, like fabric store that I was yesterday, we had to do tests. We literally had to burn like the small pieces of fabric to figure out if it was polyester or cotton, because it becomes so similar, you know. You
Yeah,
used
the
to like be able
chemistry is
to
so
just feel it by
good.
the touch, you know, honestly, you know, you used to just feel it by the touch, and now you have to do tests, you know. And obviously you can't burn the fabric in the store, obviously, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's why I'm saying like the tag is literally like your best friend at this moment, you know, because the moment you look at a tag and you see it's like 100% synthetic fibers, and honestly it's still 100% synthetic fibers, even if it says like 3% elastan and like 10% polyamide and like 5% polyester, you know. It's like that those are still all synthetic fibers. Like you can kind
Yeah.
of do like the bridge that everything that starts with poly is synthetic. That's like a little, you know.
Hmm.
So and synthetic fibers are, it's there's just like this huge discussion about it, because a lot of people say, well, it's sustainable because it's durable, you know, because like obviously we know that synthetic fibers take up to 200 years and more to biodegrade, you know. So literally
Yeah.
like just to
That's
disappear, like when you have a 100% plastic t-shirt, it will literally take around 200 years to disappear,
How
and that's
does that
insane.
affect your skin, though? I mean, the thing is, I'm a
And
cancer
also that,
survivor.
yeah,
That's
oh
another
god,
thing that people don't think about. Like in
yeah.
fashion, people put makeup on, they put lipstick
Mm-hmm.
on, they put creams
Mm-hmm.
on. They never think about, is that carcinogenic? Is
Yeah,
that toxic? Because I've
yeah,
heard about lead being in lipstick and all kinds of things,
yeah.
and it's like whether or not the companies even think about. And then the problem with some of the regulation, like the FDA in the U.S. Just like the EPA, over the years, the corporate, machine has weakened the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you had, you know, these massive chemical issues back in when they were originally set up, they would go and be very clear about, oh, this level of toxicity is bad. Now
Mm,
it's hard to get them to, say whether the water is clean or not, because
yeah.
whether the air is clean or not, whether the fabric is safe to run, where the food is, because they'll have like these acceptable levels of toxicity. And then
Yeah.
you have to really like, do you agree with their acceptable level of toxicity?
No, 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 it's terrible. Obviously, like chemicals and also microplastics are a huge thing. I'm really happy that you talked about it because obviously we have like some organization like CDHC who are having like a list of all the chemicals that are hazardous and literally like so damaging and literally can cause cancer. And those are chemicals that are used to dye or that are used, you know, to edit like the look of jeans, you know, to make when
Mhm.
we used to like edit with sandpaper or we have like all those different ways to make them, you know, like make them look washed, or now we have like
Or
this
aged,
petrol
yeah.
look, you
It's
know.
by a chemical
So
wash or something to do
so
that.
yeah, especially like in the denim industry, I'm very thankful that we're trying and we have like a lot of new innovations, you know, with like lasers and enzyme dyeing. So we have a lot of innovations, but still denim is like one of the most more, like we have the most chemicals in denim. But obviously like all the colors that we're using, you know, all the dyeing processes, we need to be so extremely aware of, you know, like what kind of chemicals we put into the garments, and also microplastics. Like nobody really thinks about it, but there are new studies that like literally a child up to the age of 12 should not wear microplastics because we always have to think like the skin is the biggest organ
Yeah,
on our
absorbs
body.
everything. Yeah, not
It
just
absorbs
eating it.
everybody.
Like you're
Yeah.
not just like, or you're not licking or chewing on your clothes, but
No.
your skin is taking in
Yeah.
anything it's in contact with. And this is where, well, like I always seems like our regulatory structure has fallen down and not
Mm-hmm.
and they're just totally in the bag of industry. And I understand, well, people have to work, people need to make profit. But
Nah.
profit and work to the extent like some of these companies make massive amounts of profit, and any kind of regulation they act like is against their freedom. But people cancer is like is a plague in the world, and the cancer rates are going up all the time because of the level of toxicity and all the things we wear, eat, consume, have in the house, gases give off, things that we have around us. And we have so much tech that's not been cross checked against other tech or other products. So it
So
might
true.
be okay, maybe. But when you put it with a bunch of other things that are toxic and you've got all these toxic things in your space, it's not okay.
No. No, I think, but that's what I think that like those conversations that we're having right now are so incredibly important, you know, because there's just so much people who just simply don't know it. Like there's also a new study that especially when it comes to like sleepwear, you know, like the garments that you wear in the night, it's so incredibly important because when you sleep, you sweat and you absorb what like
Mhm.
water and
Yeah.
sweat, and then if you wear polyester on your skin, then it mixes up with the polyester and then it goes back into your skin, you know. So that's why I'm saying, but those are like all of the studies and all of the information that we need to know and that we need to, you know, like share with the public, and we need to educate our consumer because they literally just don't know it. And that's why I'm saying like we used to know, and like now I feel like people know more about it, that we have like a problem with fast fashion because of sweatshops and like the environmental damage, but we
Mhm.
keep learning and learning that is actually infecting our health, and that's just so
Well,
dangerous.
I think you're the first person I've ever talked to in all the years that has pointed out the danger to health from clothing, you know, and, I think it's obvious people know like food, air, water, but clothing, I think has been missed by a lot of people. You've been educating, so there's people who probably follow you that understand it. But I think there's a lot of, people just want the lowest cost thing. So then when they go shopping for clothes, they go for the lowest cost. And in the industry, for like to throw all this synthetic stuff at everybody, saying, "Oh, well, this is going to be like the panacea for everything." But I think people need to, like I said, they need to look at the pillars of your life. Like your health is really important.
It's the
Like,
most important thing. Without
and when
health,
you find
there's
out when
nothing,
you,
honestly. Yeah.
yeah, I'm a cancer survivor. Like at age 27, I got cancer. I'm 57. I got by
I'm
it.
so sorry.
But
Yeah.
you wouldn't like when you're 27, you don't think that you're gonna get something like that, right? So my world after getting cancer, I started looking at like volatile organic compounds. I started, I have filters all over my house, filters on my shower, filters that pull out microplastics, that pull out like VOCs. Because it's like a lot of what I learned about my cancer was it was caused by external pollution. The type of cancer I had most likely came from external pollution. So I had to like
Mhm.
try to reduce as much. I organically grow a lot of my vegetables, so I don't get pesticides. I buy things, and I live in New Hampshire, so there's a lot of organic farms that are certified that I can get delivered food. And I just, you have to take the time, and it costs more money. It does. I mean, it costs more. By like I want to live, so I had to
Of course.
prioritize what I'm going to pay for. And so you just have to start thinking in those terms, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely, and honestly, when it comes to cheap, I feel like for like when you talk to a lot of consumers, the main answer that you get why they buy fast fashion and why they buy synthetic clothing, is literally the price point, and that's just also a point where I would just always and always answer buy vintage, always. Literally, because in vintage, like we used to not use as much polyester in our garments as we do
Mhm.
today. Like we literally, like the rise of fast fashion was literally like around like the last 20 years. It really exploded, and we really like understood the like the power of plastic and the opportunity of plastic. But before, we would not. We would literally we would use cotton and hemp
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and linen and wool and cashmere. Like we used to wear natural fibers. So for me, like the only way really to go is to buy vintage. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm wearing. I may look like a grandma, but honestly, I don't care.
Well, I think it's a cool look, being an artist, a lot of artists, some of us have gone futuristic and wearing too much like synthetic stuff, but there's a lot of people that like the old styles. They like to go
Yeah.
back and find stuff from the past. I know why music, sometimes we go back to the 20s, the
Mm-hmm.
1920s to look at things just because like the aesthetic. We go back into different time periods. And like you're saying, like you go back and there's less of this industrial lies, synthetic stuff. There's like even in the music today, like I look for things that are more like analog than digital
Mm-hmm.
because the digital is part of the problem in terms of trying to be perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no
Mm-hmm.
like part of the analog age or the organic or like physical instrument like an acoustic guitar from like 1952. It just has a sound that something
Mm-hmm.
that's built today doesn't have. And so finding things from the past give you like an advantage. And then, like you're saying, it doesn't have the kind of. I think the problem with the modern world is like everybody thinks all these advancements are like always moving us forward. Sometimes they're not.
No, no, they're really not. They're really not. And honestly, why I'm such a fighter for vintage is because literally, like the most sustainable thing you can do is just prolong the lifespan of a garment, and that's what we know. We can literally like reduce the impact of a clothing by 30% just by wearing it 1 year longer.
Mhm.
Because like just last year, like 2023, we had 92 million garments on landfills, and just like ending up there. And I feel like that's like also a problem. If I may, I would like, to
Yeah.
move there for just for a second, because everybody is talking about like right now, like right now, I want a cheap garment. Right now, I want the dress for a night. But nobody thinks about the impact that the garment is having once it ends on a landfill. Because the fact is that the polyester garment is literally harmful in every step of the way. It is harmful when we extract the raw material, the fossil fuels from the earth, and we know it's not renewable. So how the hell are we using something that is non-renewable and that will end? Like we know it will end and we just keep using it. Like I just don't see the
It
logic in
damages
there.
the water table. I mean, it damages the soil.
Everything,
So
everything,
it's
it
just
damages the soil. It damages we have so much air pollution through the CO2 emissions that is like being produced while we
the
turn the
gases
fossil
start coming
fuel.
off. Like when
Yeah,
it breaks
well,
down, the gases kind of are probably not. The fumes
everything, you
coming
know.
from it are everything's bad.
And that's the thing. And that's literally the thing. So at the very beginning, we have a problem. Then while we wear it, we have a problem. And then at the end of the day, we still have a problem because once it ends in landfill, we have like the microplastics that are shedded, that are going to the water, that are going to the soil. But we also have methane gas. A polyester t-shirt will literally produce methane gas while it just lays in a landfill. And methane gas is 25% more potent than CO2. It's
Yeah.
literally harmful every single the way. And just as a also when the t-shirt is just as a person's home, you know, and you just wash it, it's harmful because every time we wash a polyester garment, it sheds microplastic that goes into the water. It's literally harmful every single step, every single step.
Well, the thing
And it's
is,
just so mind-blowing
the
to me.
chemical industry has minimized the true cost. This is one thing I always I would want to kind of go into too, because when I started looking into things because of cancer, what I started to point out when I was doing my research was the true cost of products is not really out there. Because if the company had to pay for the cost to the damage to the water table, to the air, to the soil, lawsuits from people getting cancer, people getting sick, they wouldn't be able to sell that product. If they actually had to pay the fines for the damage their product is doing. So what they do is they try to make it so that they don't get any kind of rules on them. There's no regulation on them, so they don't really pay the true cost. So then the consumer then has to be the one to this, to make that decision economically. Can stop buying it. If you stop buying it, they'll stop making it.
That's what I hope. That's what I firmly hope and I pray for, honestly.
Yeah,
Honestly.
because that's the only solution when you can't get the politician to change a rule because they're kind of bought off. The only way you can get them is like stop buying the garbage, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I firmly do believe that the consumer has the highest power. You know, that's why I think that conversations like this are so incredibly important. You know, because if nobody buys it, they lose all their money. It's literally as simple. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but
You
and
don't have to
honestly,
change a
like
rule.
yeah, you know, like, and that's why I always have like this one sentence, like, together we can change fashion, through fashion we can change the world. And I honestly believe that's true because, like, if you look at the damage, like, literally the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world, you know, and currently we have like around 400 people employed in the industry. So we have like so many people's lives at stake currently, you know, and when you think about it even further, every single person on this earth is wearing clothes, you know, so it's literally an industry that's infecting the entire world. So I really do believe that if we change the fashion industry, like literally the second most polluting industry in the world, we can do so much good. It's insane, you
Now,
know.
when you deal with people in the industry and you start to speak like this, how many people kind of turn off and don't want to talk about it? How many people have an aha moment and say, "Oh, I didn't realize."
uh I would say it's probably, I don't know. It's probably like 50-50 to be fair, you know, because a
Mm.
lot of people will be like, "Oh," and then don't care. Then some people will try to fight me and be like, "Yes, but we're giving them jobs, you know, so they
Yeah,
should be
they want
thankful." And
jobs.
then you should see me, you know. Then I will get really mad because I'm like,
Y-
"Oh, great. Okay,
y-
so they're working 14 hours a day for 13 cents to make your crappy t-shirt that you buy for $3, and now they should say thank you for that. Are you for real? Like, do you
Yeah,
want to
for
have
real.
this conversation with me, you know?"
Yeah.
So this is always a fun way.
Well, the
And then
capitalist,
there,
yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah,
capitalist
it's
always is like the job is the most important thing, even if the job is like it's almost like slave labor, right?
it
It's
is,
like
it literally
it's
is.
not the kind of job that you would envision that you want to spend 20 years doing yourself, right? So,
And that's
so
the point, you know? And that's literally the point. And that's how I even got into this entire conversation, to be fair, you know, because I was working as a seamstress for the designer that I told you about, you know, at the very, very beginning of my fashion career. And I was literally asking a question as random as, how do my colleagues work? And I was doing like the custom designs, you know? So I was thinking like the large scale productions that we sell in the shop, who does that? And how
who's
do
doing
they
what?
work?
Yeah.
And it was literally like a woman in Bangladesh literally doing the exact same thing that I am doing, but being in an unsafe environment, being in a toxic environment, not getting
Yeah.
paid fairly, having to work like three times the amount that I'm doing. And that's where this whole thing started for me, because I'm like, the only thing that's different between me and this woman is that she was unlucky enough to be born in a different place on earth. That's all. We're both
Yeah.
women,
It seems
we're
like
both
this.
daughters, you know what I mean? We're both like maybe, girlfriends or sisters or whatever. We're literally both women having the equal value, both, bones and skin and blood. There's no difference. But I was just a little bit luckier being born somewhere elsewhere. And that's just something I can't get over with, you
Well,
know?
the whole capitalist structure is it goes for the lowest cost of production with no morality. The whole
Yeah.
thing about capitalism is kind of Calvinistic, and it's like if you make money, then somehow you're closer to God because like you're making money and that makes you a good person. Without the morality of okay, you're going to the place where you can pollute the most, pay the least, and not take care of the worker. Because if they get hurt, there's no protection. If they get sick, there's no help. If they get, if
Yeah.
they're being taken advantage of because they're a child laborer, like oh well, like we're giving them something to do. Like there's no connection except that like oh this there's like the idea that the capitalist cannot be restricted because that's like socialist or that's communist. And so the idea the freedom is on the boss, but there's no freedom for the worker. It seems to be like there's no and anybody who talks about freedom for the worker, they're like, oh, you're going in a left wing direction. And it to me it's very frustrating because where's the humanity in that?
Yeah.
Where's the morality in your actions? Like when you do something, you need to look at the impact everything you do, right? And
Absolutely.
so like all this high tech stuff that takes advantage of like mineral resources from Africa and causing war for the
It's
high tech
insane.
world we're in. And
It's
nobody wants to
insane.
talk about it, or they put they wash it and say, "Oh, we're taking care of it." Like, no, you're not.
I
you
hate
know,
it. I hate it so much. If you want to, I'm happy to share one story that I actually had from my mentor, Matteo Ward, who was in India, and he was at like a fabric production, and everything was beautiful and perfect. They had filter systems, and everything was like super high tech, and they were certified in everything. And then you have like this marvelous company, and then right next to it you have like like the agriculture fields of the community living around the company, where you have like your salads and your vegetables and everything. And you could literally see how all the wastewater of this beautiful company is going directly into the field. So
into the
he
field.
knows that he literally kills the entire community because he's putting like all the chemicals that are used to die directly into the fields where his family grows the vegetables. And my mentor asked this guy, and he said, how is this popular? You have the filter system. And India's like, yes, but I don't have the money to turn them on.
Oh,
So
that's
I
great.
know that I'm killing my community, but this because I do this job, and because like I take the offers and the orders of your Western brands, I can at least kill them a little slower because I can still make enough money to feed them so they can live a little longer. And
I don't know
honestly,
if it's
this was as a
acceptable.
point I broke down. I was literally like not able. And that's the thing, like I have so many stories that I heard and so many things that I've seen for myself. And I'm so often at the point where I cannot bear this anymore because it's so terrible that I just don't know how to live with that knowledge. But at the same time, if I don't share it, nothing will ever change.
Well, I think is people have to
You
start
know?
getting a bottom line because the Earth is kind of pushing back on us,
Yeah.
and it's going to be like a reckoning. Gaia is going to have a reckoning with people. And when like New York City's underwater and Florida's underwater, the West will finally figure out that all the stuff we've done with the fossil fuels has a cost, and the scientists weren't lying,
Yeah.
right? And so the problem is like people don't deal with something until it's in their face, right? When the Category 6 hurricane is in America's face and it destroys like the whole state of Florida, or you have like the Great Lakes totally inundates that part of the US, which is predicted, people were like, "Oh, you didn't understand climate science?" It's like now there's a disaster. Now the government actually has to do something. And now it's at the point where all the years we could have prepared, you didn't take the time. So the problem
It's
is people
insane.
like accept these oligarchs and these capitalist like arguments because it's like this whole thing of like communism or socialism against capitalism without thinking about the morality that your so-called religion is supposed to teach you. Like if you are hurting your neighbor, you don't love your neighbor. I don't care if you're giving them a your job. It's like, well, you need to understand: are you killing them, or are you not killing them? And people
Amen.
don't want to have that conversation, and they say they're moral people. So my
Yeah.
whole argument from philosophically, you can't be moral if you're killing somebody.
No, no, you cannot. You cannot. And honestly, like what you said is so true. Like we have all the statistics and we have like the proof that, with the rising sea levels, we will have cities being swallowed by the water.
It's gonna happen.
It's
You
just
can't get away from
facts.
it.
It's literally just facts, like and it's honestly it's just like so simple, like the world is getting hotter, the icebergs are like
It's math.
declining,
It's
and
math.
the
Math is math.
water that is produced by like melting ice will catch up to it eventually. And what is so mind-blowing to me is we're not in ancient Egypt anymore where we believe that the earth was flat. We
Yeah,
know it's round. We know that if we pollute chemicals and we pollute waters here, eventually they
comes
will
back.
find their way
It all
around,
comes around.
and that's the thing. And honestly, like and I'm kind of waiting for the people to stand up. Like we have news where Africa is literally like, we don't want the white man's trash anymore, like stop it, because it's true, like it used to maybe like start with like a social component of like we're donating like our old clothes, but they have more than enough. And honestly, with like the trash pieces that we're giving them that are
Mhm.
literally like fast fashion t-shirts that were made to only last for 4 washes with
Oh,
plant
geez.
obsolescence. It's literally like it's a word in the industry that we use, plant obsolescence. How can I create a t-shirt that it will last for 4 washes? And
Well,
that's the thing that
and
they
yes,
can't even do anything with that anymore. They
yeah, it's
used to
just
have like a whole industry about it. They used to like be the kings of upcycling, and now they're getting our trash that nobody can use for anything anymore.
well, it's just creating waste and not thinking about the sustainability is it's so destructive. It's like this throwaway concept. The throwaway styrofoam, you know, container for your burger, and people, used to throw them out the window. Like the mindset of a person who buys a burger with styrofoam and plastic cup, finishes it in their car because they don't want their car to look dirty. They throw it out the window. Now, what kind of mindset is that? Like my car is clean, but I just polluted the stream or I polluted the grass on the side of the road, and now some animal might choke on it, might die because they take it to their baby and they give them a piece of plastic. It's like there's no there's no thinking to me, long term thinking. It's like there's a lot of people, and I blame the industry, but the public has to have some level of responsibility. Like you can't just go for the throwaway, quick fix, junk food fashion, like you're saying. It's like junk food, anything, junk, anything. What's
Yep.
the first thing part of it? It's junk.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. I think that fast food and fast fashion are literally the same thing, because you may feel excited when you buy it, but honestly, afterwards you feel kind of shitty.
Yeah, well, it's
So
terrible. It's full of chemicals. I mean, it's like it's not like you went to the food truck in LA and got a real authentic taco that's kind of from like Guatemalan taco or there's something different, and it's actually been handmade, homemade,
yeah.
good food
With like
versus the
grandma's
big
recipe, that's
yeah
like being passed down.
yeah
No.
like why you go to the local donut shop rather than going to the chain because they make it from scratch. They
Yeah.
use or get in New Hampshire we have these like local donut shops and they just they don't use all these chemicals. It's made fresh that day. It's gonna actually expire in a couple of days. It's not gonna last. because it's not supposed to.
That's
If
the
you make it a
thing.
big thing, it's like it's good for the time. It's a time limit, and people have been trying to extend things, or they're trying to make throwaway things. And throwaway things, so destructive to have these throwaway plastic things and not
Mm.
consider what it does. But then like you're saying, we've been kind of talking about like Africa and India, but the whole idea of like diversity and then also discrimination of people based on like their class or cultural level. Like as if you have
Yeah.
these, so-called first world countries and
Mm.
then third world countries, and then people like they talk about how they believe in human rights, but then they send their garbage to the third world. It's like say that what kind of what's the human rights in that?
It's terrible. It's literally making me so mad. And honestly, like I'm so happy to see India on the absolute rise. Literally, like they're taking over music, they're taking over fashion. We have so many like new fashion designers, everything is like so produced locally. We have like new fashion weeks in like countries nobody ever talked about. So I'm like happy about it, but still I'm still also fighting it because it's like the big brands that the whole world knows is still having a problem with that. And that's
Yeah,
what I'm also like fighting about. You probably saw in my profile where I was like, I'm starting with like genderless clothing pieces because who am I to tell anybody what to wear? I'm starting with like, having 11 sizes because not only SM and L deserve beautiful clothing and deserve to feel
yeah.
comfortable in their body.
Well, you have
So
to be able to fit. The problem is like just having those limited sizes kind of shames people.
it is. And
People
it
go
actually
and
shames. Yeah.
they can't find their size and they start feeling bad about themselves. It's like not
Yeah.
everybody just because you want people to fit into a certain bucket. You
And I
know,
hate it. I hate it because not like it has literally like we have so many people like obviously for example with diabetes.
yeah.
Like diabetes is something like my grandma had it. Like
Mhm.
God bless her. And it was not because she was eating burger and sweets all day. Like yeah,
Sometimes it's
so
genetic. Yeah, it's
yeah,
genetic.
it's literally it was nothing. It has nothing to do with her, or her like her eating habits. So it's literally like there are people who are bigger not because they participated, and even so, who am I to judge what you eat or how your body looks like? My job is to make you feel comfortable, feel beautiful, and make you look the best you can ever look. That's my job as a designer, and that's my responsibility as a designer. And that's why also my responsibility as a designer is to have all ages, all skin colors, all ethnic groups, all cultures. And while we're talking about culture, also respecting all the cultures and having extremely high attention to the fact that I'm not culturally appropriating any kind of style. And if I do feel inspired by someone, I will work with that culture and I work with the people from that culture because it's
Yeah,
theirs. It's their history. It's their
that's
art. Ugh,
yeah,
I'm
that's a
so
big
sorry.
thing. No, it's a big thing because sometimes in
Yeah.
music we get people that go in, they do like world music,
Hmm.
and it's great, but then they don't, it's kind of like plagiarism. They don't cite where it came from.
Yeah.
And
Where's
it's a
the
big thing,
respect?
like with like, I love Led Zeppelin, but the big problem with Led Zeppelin historically was they didn't cite the bluesmen that they took the songs from. There were people like Led Belly, Robert Johnson, a bunch of classic black bluesmen that they just went and took song structures and didn't cite that they came from that. Now the Beatles didn't do that. They would if they used somebody's, they would actually cite it. They would say it came from this black musician. But Led Zeppelin didn't do that, and there's a problem to me when you don't cite your influence.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need and then you need to actually go work with them, like
Yeah.
go and bring them into the process and cite them, and then give them opportunity. So that to me is a better model than to just, oh, this is hip, and then you somehow say, well, I just somehow absorbed it without citing or giving opportunity to people that you absorbed it from.
No. And honestly, just do your research, you know, because it's
Yeah.
important. It's important to pay respect. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's like people today with AI. AI.
Yeah.
My daughter's a graphic artist, and you're an artist,
Wow.
and the idea, like a lot of times these learning libraries, machine language, they're grabbing all this they're being trained on people's work, but then they
Mhm.
don't pay royalties for the work they're using. So the
Mhm.
tech today is like violating all the copyright law, all the patent law. The AI
Mhm.
is like jumped around it. And because the problem I have with tech is some of the tech bros that do stuff, they go and they do something and they jump so far ahead of the regulations and the morality that just because you can do it doesn't make it right. But they have this idea just because they can do it that it is right. And I think that's a big problem. I think you probably see the parallels in our in the fashion industry because you can do something with chemicals and chemistry,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it has a
Absolutely.
result doesn't actually mean that that's what you should be doing.
100%. And also with AI, it's so funny that you mentioned it, because we always need to remember AI is only reflecting the opinions and biases of the people who programmed them.
And trained it,
You
yeah,
know, so if I because obviously like I'm working in the fashion industry, right? So it's like I do believe in the power of AI, that if I have like an idea for a garment or whatever, I will try to make it with AI first, so
a
I
tool,
can like cut
yeah,
down all the fabric costs, all the, you know, fabric that we waste by doing trials and errors. You know, I will try to manufacture a virtual picture before I touch fabric, so the moment I touch fabric I can know that we have like a very limited amount of waste because we did all the work and the try and
that's
error
smart. That's a
virtually
smart use
before,
of
you
that's
know.
being is a tool.
So
You're using it like a
absolutely,
tool.
yeah. But yeah, but that's what I'm saying, you know. But honestly, like the amounts of fights that I had with so many AI platforms, because I was like, but I want a black model, but I want a curvy model, but I want an 80-year-old model, and they were giving me like extremely skinny white models, you know.
Yeah, that's
So
what they're
like
trained on. It's
just
a
that
bias.
fight,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a
But that's what I'm
bias. The
saying,
problem
you
is
know.
the tech bros, like I always refer to them as the tech bros, but the problem
I
is with the tech
understand.
bros, go look at who they are.
Yeah,
They tend to be just white men, right?
yeah.
So when they make choices on the learning library, they think that somehow that's a universal choice. But like their idea of beauty is because of what there are a bunch of white men who say what beauty is, a bunch of white men who say what something is, and so then when you have other opinions or other cultures, they don't value that, so they don't bring in the history of indigenous people, or they don't value historical things from African Americans in the history of the United States. They only value the founding fathers. They
Hmm.
don't value like all the contributions that African Americans have made for in the last 400 years. They don't put that in the learning library. So when you
Yeah,
go to look for like what's an American, you're gonna
yeah.
see something that looks like Mount Rushmore. You're not gonna see anything else.
Yeah. But I think, you know, what a beautiful example is that I currently did the work on something, and I literally just challenged myself because I went through all my sites and all my, you know, references of the document that I did. And then I was like looking them up, you know, like for the first time ever, I was looking the people up, like the authors of, you know, like all the articles that I referenced it in my book. And I realized they were all white, you know. So I was like, okay, we will not do that. So I was literally putting in the work and being like, okay, but I want references and I want black authors. I want the opinions of them. I want their work, because I cannot believe that black people or American or Asian or whatever did not write any text or any book or anything else
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
And simple, and only because Google is showing me like the white man's voice at the first, it does not mean that I'm sufficed with that and I will not do additional research. So I think it's really about the magic of taking a step further,
Yeah,
you
you
know.
have to you can't just take the first AI result. You
Mm.
need to refine it. Like when you're doing your prompt engineering, a lot of times, AI is designed to make you happy. It will give you what it thinks you want. If you
Mm.
don't do the extra refinement you'll just take what it gives you, and what it gives you is going to be kind of like what you just said. It's going to be
Mm.
the kind of common denominator. It's like, okay, this is kind of like majority culture. We're going to give you the majority culture as the primary feedback coming back. if you go and refine it, say, well, I want something from a Latino perspective, or I want something from a Native American perspective, or I want something that from from a different religion, right? It's not just like
Yeah.
Catholic or Christian. I want something that's
Yeah.
from like Hindu or Buddhist, or then you're going to get different philosophy. But if you just put in religion, they might just give you Christian as the primary thing coming back. So that's
Mm,
you have to take some discernment. And I think a lot of times, like fast food culture, you go for what the hit is. You don't do the extra work.
yeah. Nah, let's try to not be as lazy and comfortable.
Yeah, I think we have the world's making it so we're gonna get a little uncomfortable. So
Oh yeah.
the world's gonna, Guy's gonna make the world a little more uncomfortable, and it's gonna we're gonna have to pay attention because she's trying to tell us something. Um, and sometimes it takes you know the idea of like going into the shop when you're buying your clothes and looking at the label
Yeah.
and looking like what's in it, and
Yeah.
then realizing if you see all these chemicals and you don't see cotton, you don't see wool, you don't see natural fibers, like maybe I don't want that.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then
No, it's
and then
literally as simple as that. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's like you don't have to do a lot of research, but the
Mm,
idea, like you're saying, is maybe go to vintage clothing store and like, hey, this stuff is cool. This gives
yeah.
me a different look. And, everybody always wants to look the same, but if you go with that, you're gonna have a unique look. Being an artist is like having a unique look is kind of cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, I feel like in difference there is power, you know.
Yeah, because it's like I don't, being an artist, I've always wanted to do something that stands out. Not just to be different, but to like represent my voice, like my aesthetic. Like if I have a certain aesthetic, like I want to kind of have that resonate. So there's a reason why you're doing the things you're doing. Some people might not think about why they do what they do, but over time, it's like you start. It's like why am I wearing this? So
Yeah.
what am I trying to say?
Yeah.
Do you think about that? I mean, I think in your industry, you must think about that. Like that's like a primary thing.
Yeah, I think it was honestly like I've never ever dressed myself in order to stand out. I would never do that, to be fair. It just happens naturally, and then I realized that I'm so drawn to vintage clothes because there's just so much value that the industry and the community had before,
The history of
and
it
the
too,
history.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, like it starts with like just the shoulder pads. Obviously, this is like a men's jacket, but the shoulder pads remind me of the 80s and of the power movement and the power dressing and the whole philosophy of women trying to be equal in the workplace as men, so they dressed as men, so like
Oh
like
yeah.
they would
I remember
hide
that.
their silhouette in order to kind of like be recognized as equal because they would have like the same shape as a man.
Yeah.
So
So
there's
the
just so
feminine
much
shape
power.
was like
Yeah.
minimized to make it more like
Yeah.
androgynous to
Yeah.
change it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
And
that was the whole thing. Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying. I mean, of course, we have like other people, who would dress even more feminine in order to fight against that in their own way. And I feel like everybody has the chance of like expressing their own voice through fashion, and that's why I love fashion in the first place. Is because it gives us the power to be whoever we want to be. If you want to look feminine, you can put on like a tight dress or a fancy color or whatever. If you want to look more bossy, you can go to another silhouette. Like literally, fashion can give you the power to be whoever you want to be. And that's what I feel like is the magic of fashion. A garment can literally transform the entire way you feel about yourself, your posture, your attitude. Fashion has such a power, and that's what I love about it. I just need to fight for it that it's becoming cleaner and more ethical.
Yeah. Because I mean, I always think about David Bowie, the theatrics of like what he did in terms of his characters. And it was all about like what his attitude on stage, but also the clothes, like being Ziggy Stardust. Ziggy
Yeah.
Stardust, he had that look. And when he started, he didn't look like that. When Bowie first started, he dressed kind of like the Beatles, but then that didn't
I
work.
love it.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
He had some songs that the videos of him like wearing like a suit like the Beatles, like the early Beatles, where they wore those like gray suits with the ties and everything. And he has
Mhm.
that look, and it's like, well, that didn't work. I don't. That didn't go anywhere. but
Yeah, if
but
you
this
think of it,
idea, yeah,
yeah,
the theatrics of like becoming these characters made
absolutely. I
him like
mean,
made like the whole presentation. It wasn't just the music; it's the whole everything about it.
yeah,
His attitude, the
oh,
look, the clothes, the songs. But it's like it's integral in music. That fashion is a big part of music because of the visual with the
yeah,
sound. Tells a story.
yeah. Fashion really shows who you are and really really creates a fantasy about it, you know. There's a
But
magic
now
in
we have to
fashion, I
think
believe.
about like, okay, what I'm wearing is it actually good for the world? Like,
Yeah,
or it might have been like the primary focus is this gonna create my image with it? But now if you're an artist and you're doing some elaborate image with your clothing, you should, based on this discussion, they start thinking about like, is this sustainable? Is this how are the people that help me create this image? Are they actually being treated fairly? You
yeah.
know,
And that's the thing. And I honestly believe I feel like there is a huge stereotype about sustainable fashion that it's like boring and it's only like, non-colored hemp and whatever, like people are really trying to make sustainable fashion like synonymous to boring and without color and whatever. But it's literally not true. It's absolutely not true. The only thing that you have to do is you do your research.
hmm
And that's what I think is so beautiful. Like the sustainable fashion is on the rise. We have so many companies that are like really focused on ethical production and are really focused on like using non-toxic chemicals. Like for example, I adore Lensing. I don't know if you know them. It's an Austrian company who do lyocell, and they literally have a new system that is non-toxic. They use only renewable energy. They don't have one toxic chemical within the entire supply chain,
Well,
so it's
they done
literally
the
like
work.
there's so yeah, and that's the thing, and they are doing the work, and that's why I'm so happy to advocate for them because I believe in them and my products are with them, and honestly, it's like kind of do the work. When I set it up my supply chain for my collections, I traveled there. I traveled to
To
Portugal,
make
and I've
sure.
been there,
Just
and
read the statement.
yeah, and that's
You
the
go
thing,
check it out, right? Well,
and that's the thing, and
you gotta
you
do the
got to
work.
do your homework. You got to do your homework, and if it's important to you, then you will go on that flight and you will drive there and you will sit there and you will sit with the seamstresses, and like I'm literally working with a factory where the CEO of the company is working in the same exact room as her seamstresses, and
But
that's
that's
the
what you
kind of
wanna see. You
transparency
don't
that
wanna just see
yeah,
a report that they tell
no,
you that without going to
no,
actually verify. You
yeah,
this whole idea like trust but verify, right? It's like
absolutely,
and it's
absolutely,
like you gotta take the time to, because like we said, there's like there's this whole thing like we're kind of greenwashing
yeah,
or like washing it to make it look like it. You really need to check. Is their
no,
supply chain, are they using child labor? Well, go check and see if they're using the child labor or not. Like, are they using
yeah,
toxic chemicals? Go see what they're doing. What do they do with their wastewater? How do they process it? Do they clean it? Do they run it through filters? Can they give you
literally.
reports? Can they show you the evidence? Can we see any violations against them? Can we
Yeah,
see
do your
like
homework.
yeah, you have,
Literally.
and that's gonna take more work than just saying like, "Oh, these guys have a cool look."
Code of conduct,
Yeah,
probably,
the code of
like
conduct
no,
is
no,
like,
no,
what's
no,
that mean?
no, no,
The
no, no.
lawyers wrote it.
Yeah, no, 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 no. You really gotta, gotta look for yourself. You gotta do your homework. You gotta travel there. You gotta see with your own eyes. And honestly, like I filmed the entire process on my YouTube channel because I believe that my consumers want to see it too. And I believe that's like one of the key things that we can actually do to fight the system is by being 100% transparent and I mean literally transparent, not
Yeah,
only give you like the company name. I mean, that's great. And I appreciate every single thing that people are doing for more transparency. But it's literally for me, it's one step further than just giving you the company name because the company name can have a great website and beautiful pictures and a great code of conduct, but you have no idea what's happening and you have no idea what kind of subcontractors they have, And honestly, if you just do just a tiny bit of research, it's very clear very quickly what are the endangered countries, where are the countries where you do have problems, where it's known that they have subcontractors that are absolutely illegal, that it will absolutely do child labor, because the subcontractors is literally a family working in the garage, like being 8 people and living and sleeping and working in the same room, you know?
Yeah.
So it's literally like it's quite evident, and I feel like people who care just a little bit have an amazing opportunity of creating something beautiful that is beautiful inside and out.
And I think the consumer, when they know that something's been really green checked out, that it's not green washed, but it's actually, and I know we're kind of low over time, but are there efforts to create labeling that's actually real, that's actually significant, or labels that actually can be trusted, or are we still not in that? We're not ready for that yet.
Well, I do believe the thing is, I don't even think that like for me, like labels is that the tag where you literally like you look inside your jacket or your garment piece and you literally have just like the that types of fibers that are in the garment, you know.
Hmm.
And for me, that's like a label. Like that's a label that I trust. Like everything you could just put like a hang tag or whatever, where you know like you have some beautiful written words. I don't care about it. I need to see that. And
Hmm.
the funny thing is, and I don't want to be rude, but the funny thing is, most companies think you don't even care enough to lie when it comes to the composition of the garment. So they will tell you that the garment is 100% polyester. They will tell you if there's cotton. They will kind of honestly, like obviously not all, you know, but most companies will speak the truth when you look at the composition label, but they count on you not looking on it. And if you look at statistics, you will see that a lot of people will literally not look at it, because the only questions that they have is it pretty? Does it fit me? Can I buy it?
Yeah, price. Yeah. Well, that's
You
where we
know?
gotta change the mindset of the consumer to understand that, like, just like a lot of people in the grocery store are looking for the organic, but maybe make the mistake of going for the natural because they don't know the difference. They actually gotta look at the ingredients. And when you
And that's
see
the
all the
thing.
chemical additives, it's like, and it says it's natural versus the organic that doesn't have it, then you start having a teaching moment. So it's like they do tell you what's in it, like you said, the label on the food product does say list everything that's there, and if you see all these chemicals, it's like, well, that doesn't look natural to me.
And that's the thing, you know. I really think I mean, and honestly, like my place, why I founded my company is I am not the person to judge. I will not spend my life pointing fingers and telling people that they do wrong, especially customers, you know, because I truly believe they're just happy that they can buy something cheap. But if your priority really lies on just buying something cheap, then please buy vintage, you know.
Yep. Yep.
And that's why I'm saying my position is not to blame anybody ever, but educate, you know. And that's why I'm saying I'm always happy to have a conversation, like what I think, what fibers are better, what fibers are worse, for what reason, you know. I really think that's just like the conversation that we need to have. That's the thing that consumers need to think about a little bit more, you know. And to honestly also just like start to see the magic in natural fibers, you know. Like I told you, when I work with lensing, it's not only because they're sustainable, because the properties of the fibers are simply amazing. They're breathable, they're sweat absorbing, they're antibacterial, they're temperature regulating. You know what I mean? Like, I adore it. And that's what
Well,
I'm
and yeah,
saying.
it's like the human
You know?
beings had natural clothes for how many thousands of years before we started doing all this stuff because the industry decided that that's what it is. But
That's
I
so true.
think, yeah, just well, we're at our kind of moment of closing today, but we do have your Instagram, and
True.
it's like BCN Schultz, and that will be fully clickable. And so people contact your Instagram. Do you
Oh, I
like take
love that.
DMs through there?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And I have like a lot of brands that I own.
Mm,
on my Instagram. So even if I don't like answer on VC and Scholz, then just text me on maybe smaller brand of mine, and I'm
mm.
always checking there, and I'm always trying to answer as many questions as possible, and I'm always trying to educate consumers on my platforms. So I'm always happy to have a conversation. I'm always happy to answer questions because I love everybody who's interested in it and trying to make a responsible decision. I love those people.
Well, I love the fact that you're out here, advocating for these things, which I think is super important. And I
Thank you so
appreciate you being
much.
a guest on the Family Like the Ghost podcast. And like I
Thank
said,
you.
that Instagram link will be fully clickable. We've just been live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We will be on all the major platforms where you can listen to or watch a podcast by tomorrow. And I want to thank you again for being a guest on the Family Like the Ghost podcast.
You've been the most amazing host, really. Thank you so much for your time and your questions and your honesty. I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Well, well, it's morning here, but I hope you have a good rest of the time you have
Thank you
in your
so much.
day.
Have a great day.
Bye bye.